What's going on, everybody? Welcome into a new edition of the Breakaway Bandits podcast, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. I am Mike Rifkin. Hope everybody is doing well. Recording this on June the 18th, 2026. So, tonight's show, we're going to recap the Stanley Cup Final. We are going to talk about new coaches and new places. And we are going to talk about a trade request in Detroit. But we are going to start off with the major story, and that is the Stanley Cup Final has ended. I told you at the beginning before the final started, I liked Vegas in 6. I was right about a part. It ended in 6 games. But I had the wrong team. The Carolina Hurricanes defeat the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games to capture the franchise's second Stanley Cup, their first one in 20 years, as they beat the Oilers 20 years ago in 7 games, 2006. Rod Brind'Amour won a cup as the captain, now wins the cup as the coach. Jordan Staal wins the Conn Smythe, and rightfully so. So let's dive into how Carolina won this series. So I think there were 3 main focal points that I would like, that I felt were the difference in this series. One, and I say this with all due respect, Rod Brind'Amour outcoached John Tortorella in this series. And it wasn't close. And I think a large part of the reason why Brind'Amour outcoached Tortorella was just because Tortorella never got a feel for this team. He came in with 8 games left. He couldn't put in a system. It was kind of like play your style. And if you kind of get out of control, that's when I'll rein you in. And that just didn't work here for Vegas. Carolina decimated through the Eastern Conference. I mean, they just decimated everyone in their path. Ottawa, boom. Philadelphia, boom. Montreal, boom. Vegas was their first real test, and they aced it with flying colors. And Rod Brind'Amour did a really great job, I felt, throughout this series of making adjustments. And I think that was the key to the series, where the adjustments Brind'Amour made versus adjustments John Tortorella never did. So let's start with the what I felt was the most aggressive adjustment. And it's not even Bussy for Anderson, which we'll get into. I thought the most aggressive decision he made was when he took Seth Jarvis off the top line and he put him with Jordan Staal and he put Jordan Martinook with Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov. So what you get when you add Jordan Martinook into that line with Aho and Svechnikov is you get a guy who will go to those dirty areas, very aggressive on the forecheck, opens things up for Svechnikov and Aho, who may not have had great series, but eventually they were going to cash in, and later in the series, they cashed in. So I think that's little flip of Jarvis and Martinook. That was a major difference for me because it also let Jarvis get his game going. He plays with a Jordan Staal who, let me be brutally honest, Jordan Staal was the best player in this series. He was outstanding. He scored a goal, even every game. He was he was so good. Dominated the faceoff circle, won, I believe, 70% of the draws. Got matched up against Jack Eichel the whole series. We'll get into that in a minute when we talk about the Vegas part. But that little flip from Brind'Amour, I thought was brilliant. I thought that was a really smart move. Bussy for Anderson was great move as well. Brandon Bussy was awesome when he came in. Even the game he lost was double overtime. You know, it was. But Carolina, look, every time they fell back, they fought. I mean, that game I'm talking about, which was game three, they're down 4-0, and they scored 4 goals in a blink of an eye to get themselves right back into that game, only to lose in double overtime. You know, and it could have been 6-0 had not been for 2 disallowed goals in that game. But I mean, they were outstanding in the series. Bossy was phenomenal when he came in. Could have given him the Conn Smythe if you wanted to. I don't disagree with the Jordan Stahl pick though. Those were two major adjustments Rob Brendamore made. I also kind of felt the other thing he did was he was never afraid to play anybody. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my fourth line's out there. Okay, I'm okay with that. You know why? His fourth line contributed offensively. Jankowski gave them a goal throughout. You know, gave them a couple of goals. They were in on the forecheck, and that Stank Oven, Blake, and Hall line. I mean, Taylor Hall was awesome throughout the playoffs. Uh, Stank Oven was phenomenal, as was Jackson Blake. Those guys were fantastic throughout. And you know, Carolina defensively, they're going to be really good. So you're probably thinking to yourself, Mike, you said he outcoached Torts, Robert Brendamore. What adjustments should Torts have made? So I think there were a couple of adjustments Torts should have made. One that I really didn't understand, especially with home ice when they got home ice, he never took the Eichel Stahl matchup away. I just didn't understand how he kept letting Jack Eichel against Jordan Stahl become a thing. And my reasoning for that is this: like, not because Jack Eichel's not a great two-way center. Jack Eichel's phenomenal. But Jordan Stahl was a beast. You know, I would have taken not Jack out, but you know, maybe you could get Stahl versus Hurdle or something. You know, I mean, they lose William Karlsson later in the series. That doesn't help them, but I just felt Torts didn't try to jumble lines until late, and it was a fight for Vegas offensively. Their power play. I mean, I get it. You got a lot of skill. To me, I don't love a 5 forward power play. Like to me, give me Shea Theodore on one of those points. If you can run that first unit with Eichel, Stone, Dorofeev up front, and then Marner and Theodore on the back, I'm okay with that. But I felt like their power play was way too passive in this series because they're looking for the perfect setup. And let me be frank, Jack Eichel had 22 points. I'm not here to bag on Eichel. 2 goals. Jack Eichel's got to be a shooter. He's got to be a shooter, especially on the power play. They were way too passive. That would have been another adjustment I would like to see from Torts. The Rasmus Anderson Noah Hanifin pair was terrible. Now it came out yesterday when Vegas did their locker cleanout. Hanifin had an injury that, according to Kelly McCrimmon, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks. If it was a normal, or if it was during the regular season, just double checking that right now. Yeah, this is courtesy of Sidbin Vegas on Twitter. Hanifin had an upper body injury that would have forced him to miss 6 to 8 weeks if it were the regular season. McNabb had 3 injuries that would have kept him out of the lineup in the regular season. Mark Stone had a torn adductor, and William Carlson will have surgery on a broken wrist. So those were the injuries at hand for Vegas. But Rasmus Anderson, I'm very curious about what Anderson's going to get on the open market because he didn't have a good playoffs. And he had a tough time once he got moved to Vegas. And the third thing Torts could have done, and I don't think he's a great option, but he could have turned to Aiden Hill at any point. Carter Hart had moments where he was really good, and he had moments where he wasn't. And to me, just because you saw how the momentum shifted when Carolina did that could have opened the door for Aiden Hill. Even if you wanted to go back to Carter Hart in Game 7, but they chose not to. That's frustrating, but it is what it is. And I think a big reason why Vegas lost was Brendan Moore outcoached Torts. Reason number two, Bossy. Bossy outplayed Carter Hart when he came in, so Bossy was a big factor. And Carolina Stars outplayed Vegas Stars, with the one exception. I thought Mitch Marner was. Listen, we could all talk about how Mitch Marner's playoff issues. He had a hat trick in this series. He was fantastic throughout the playoffs. I'm not going to get on Marner. Eichel, I the 22 points is great. I need more than 2 goals. Mark Stone, he gave you a little bit of a lift here. Hurdle, he had, I believe, 1 goal in the series. Dorofeyev didn't show up till game 5. Barbashev was a guy they could have used a little bit more from. Vegas was heavily relying on their stars. Carolina wasn't. Carolina got the depth score. Stankoven, Blake, Taylor Hall, Mark Jankowski pitched it. They weren't waiting just on Aho and Svechnikov to get going. That was a big thing in the series. So I think those were the three major reasons. Outcoached the Stars, and like I said, Carolina's power play came to play. Vegas was way too passive, and Carolina's power play came to play because they got net front presence. Vegas, who should have had a little bit more net front, was way too passive on their power play. That's why Carolina won this cup. They outplayed Vegas, and Vegas's Stars didn't show up. Outside of maybe Marner. And I know people are going to be like, he didn't have a point in the last couple of games. That's fine. I wouldn't put all the blame on Mitch Marner. Now we go into the offseason for these two teams. Let's start with Vegas. They have very little cap space. They have 4.6 million cap space, so they're going to have to create some. We're already hearing rumors about names. Aiden Hill is probably gone. Maybe Hurdle. That name's been thrown around. I think someone mentioned Mark Stone as a potential one. I don't know about that. Also, if Alex Pietrangelo decides to retire, I think that money comes off their books. And they have 4 draft picks, but they don't have one in the first 2 rounds. Their UFAs, Riley Smith, Brandon Saad, Colton Sissons, Cole Smith, Ben Hutton, Jeremy Lozon, Rasmus Anderson, and Dylan Coughlin. I mean, the only one I think they would consider is Anderson. And I don't even know after the playoffs he had if that's what they want to do or if they just feel like we gave up so much, we'll bring him back. Their top RFA is going to be Pavel Dorofeyev, who they, unless they're going to move him for something better. But I'll tell you this, if you're a team looking to give an offer sheet Dorofeev would be a kid I would offer sheet in a heartbeat. Uh, 23 years old, 24 years old, something like that. 30 goals scored the last 2 years. Wicked shot. You could sit there and say, well, he plays for Vegas. That's a kid you should be willing to take a shot on as a GM. The UFAs outside of Anderson, Ben Hutton and Dylan Coughlin, they're depth defensemen. Colton Sissons and Cole Smith are top nine forwards. Actually, Smith probably is more of a fourth liner. Sissons might be two. And Riley Smith and Brandon Saad, like at this point of their careers, they're not what they used to be. So you're not really losing much there if you're Vegas. The other big news out of Vegas is Torts is not coming back next year. John Tortorella's not coaching. They went to Henderson, their American affiliate team. And I don't know why I am blanking on the name. Just give me a second. I'm not trying to be funny on that or anything. Ryan Craig will be the coach. He was the coach at Henderson. He'll now be the coach for the Golden Knights. They kind of said they didn't want to throw him into the fire with 8 games left of the season, which makes total sense. So he'll get a fresh start in training camp. So that'll be what Vegas has to look forward to. As for Carolina, they got almost 12 million in cap space. They've got 4 picks. They can't remember my writings. I believe 0 in the second and third rounds. Their big UFA's Freddie Anderson. RFA's Alexander Nikishin. So they'll extend Nikishin. They got no issue there. Freddie Anderson, I guess it's if he wants to play and does he want to be there. And if he does, awesome. They've got money to do whatever they want. If they want to go get a superstar, they can go do it. They want another great defenseman, they could do that. Jordan Staal decides to hang him up and they want a second line center. Okay, we can make a trade. Or a third line center, rather, because I think you elevate that Stankov and Blake Hall line. That line was phenomenal. And by the way, Stankoven and Blake are locked up. So they've taken care of business. Eric Tolsky, who, by the way, wasn't even nominated for GM of the year, it's done a phenomenal job. But yeah, so congrats to the Hurricanes on winning their second ever cup. 20 years apart. It was a great series. It was a great playoffs, guys. It was a phenomenal run to the playoffs. We had some great series. We had some great individual efforts. I mean, but Carolina knew this had to be their year. Without Florida in their way, without Tampa in their way, they were able to go, you know what? Everyone else in the East, we're better than you, and we're going to show it. And they dominate the playoffs. I mean, to sweep through the first 2 rounds is unbelievable. They lost 3 games, and they lost game 1 of both series of the Eastern Conference Finals and the Stanley Cup Final, and they lost game 3 of the Cup Final in double overtime. What a run. Congrats to Rob Brent. By the way, I don't know how the Hall of Fame does it, but Rob Brendamore should be in the Hall of Fame, which I believe the Hall of Fame announcement's Monday. So I look forward to that. All right. So we got some other stuff to talk about too. We got new coaches in new spots we'll talk about. We got the Dylan Larkin request. And then I do have a side tangent for the end that I do want to make. I'm going to start with the coaches because we had some coaching news today, June 18th. And that news came technically from the NHL. Um, so Mike Babcock and the Oilers have had a back and forth. The Oilers want to make Babcock the coach. Most likely announcement comes next week. The NHL was investigating Babcock for what happened in Columbus. This is from Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. This is the NHL and Babcock. Quote, the NHL completed its review of Mike Babcock's tenure in Columbus and of certain alleged conduct associated therewith. Our investigation has concluded that even in a light least favorable to Mr. Babcock, there is no current basis to restrict his employment, close quote, which means the Oilers can hire him being the coach. Now, this also comes after Babcock had told Darren Dreger, I think it was about a month or so ago, I'm very happy retired, which now we know obviously someone speaks. So Babcock can coach. The Oilers want Babcock to become their coach. We're waiting on the announcement. How do I feel about Mike Babcock coming back? But the stories that have come out about Babcock, I don't love it. I don't love it. I'm not here for it. With the stories I've read and heard, I've lost a lot of respect for the guy. The Oilers are the most desperate team in hockey, though, in 2026-27, because they have to win right away. They have to win because they have to appease a guy named Connor McDavid. And Connor McDavid, who could say he wants to trade after the season, we'll see what happens. But what would happen if Connor McDavid did win? Would Leon Draisaitl follow? What happens with the Oilers? I don't think the Oilers understand what they've done. I think the firing of Chris Knoblauch was totally uncalled for the fact of Chris Knoblauch leads you to 2 Stanley Cup Final appearances. You lose this year to Anaheim because of the inconsistencies you've had all year. That's on the coach. As much as we want to bang it on the coach all the time, the Oiler issues were not Chris Knoblauch's fault. The Oiler problems were Stan Bowman's fault. Stan Bowman's the general manager of this hockey team. Stan Bowman makes the roster decisions. Stan Bowman makes personnel decisions. I don't think Chris Knoblauch traded Tristan Jarry for Stuart Skinner. And after that trade, Stuart Skinner outplayed Tristan Jarry. The Edmonton Oilers are a mess. And let me be honest when I say this, because if they didn't have Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, the Edmonton Oilers would be awful. They'd be an awful hockey team. McDavid and Draisaitl lift them to be a better team. Their best defense was Evan Bouchard. And I'm not knocking Evan Bouchard. He's just not a great defensive defenseman. Although he had a better year this year. All power to him. Darnell Nurse has requested a trade. Okay, that'll help you. Get that money off your books. But what's Darnell Nurse worth? In reality, what is he worth? I don't know. Matthias Ekholm is another year older. He's already in his mid-30s. And then comes the other question. What are you going to do in goal in 2026-27? Can't be Tristan Jarry after what we saw. So where are you going to go? This offseason is not about hiring Mike Babcock. This offseason is not about winning a cup. This offseason is not even about appeasing Connor McDavid. This is what the offseason is for the Edmonton Oilers. Stan Bowman has to prove he's worth it. Stan Bowman has the most to prove out of any general manager in hockey this offseason. Because come next season, if Connor McDavid says these 3 words, I want out, you're done. You're done. Because when you get rid of McDavid, does Draisaitl follow? If Draisaitl follows, do you just throw the TNT in and blow that thing up? Or do you think, okay, we have pieces that we can retool it? That's the question you have to ask. But do I like the Mike Babcock hire? I don't. But I knew you knew the NHL would let him back in for this reason. They let Joel Quenneville back in. And they would feel pretty hypocritical if they let Quenneville in and not Babcock. I know it's different situations. Both are completely wrong. But you know the NHL. And you know Gary Bettman. So Mike Babcock most likely will be the coach of the Oilers. Also in Canada, another big market, Toronto. John Shaika announced he's got a new head coach in Toronto, and they are hiring former Kings coach Jim Hiller. Now, Hiller was the coach of the Kings for about 3 seasons, for parts of 3 seasons, before being let go. Hiller replaces Craig Berube, who got fired after 2 years. Hiller was also an assistant coach with the Leafs under Mike Babcock. So Jim Hiller has a history with, you guessed it, William Nylander and Austin Matthews. So, how do we feel about Jim Hiller? Let me be blunt when I say this one. I don't love it. I don't love it. To me, and Nick Kyprios reported this, Vegas eventually said yes to a team on interviewing Bruce Cassidy. Many believe that was the Leafs. Bruce Cassidy should have been the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs if he wanted the gig. If Cassidy wanted the gig, it should have been his. But did the Leafs not want to put that much pressure on themselves? That's the question. Because if a Bruce Cassidy coach team comes in, well, there's going to be an expectation. There's a newsflash here for the Leafs. This hiring to me is so underwhelming that it makes me go in a different direction. And the direction it makes me go in is the direction of what I think John Shaika should have done. And the guy I wanted John Shaika to hire. And that wasn't even Bruce Cassidy. So I want an experienced coach that's a little bit younger. The guy I thought who was perfect for the Toronto Maple Leafs was Jay Woodcroft. And here's the reason why I think Jay Woodcroft would have been perfect for the Leafs. Because Jay Woodcroft would have signified something. Jay Woodcroft could have signified the fact of, as good as we think we are, we're going to change things a little bit. And Jim Hiller signifies a change too. But Jim Hiller's not that different from Greg Berube. You know how I know that? The LA Kings were a defensive-minded team. You bringing in Jim Hiller. So in LA, under Jim Hiller, at one point LA had a top 3 center of Anze Kopitar, Philip Deneau, Quentin Byfield. That was a top 3 center for LA under Hiller. Toronto does not have a number 2 center. You have Austin Matthews, you have John Tavares. Who's that third line center? Here's the other thing I think you could have signaled with Jay Woodcroft. And it's not even a white flag. It's we're retooling this. We're rebranding this. It's not Austin and Willie's team anymore. It's going to be John Scheike's team and Jay Woodcroft's team, which would have meant you could have traded Austin Matthews right now. They still may have to trade Matthews, and Matthews says, I want out. Here's my question for the people of Toronto. I'm not talking about July 1st. I'm not even talking about next week at the draft when you take Gavin McKenna first overall. Right now, June 18th, June 19th, June 20th, are the Toronto Maple Leafs, as constructed, a playoff team next year? I'm going to let you sit and think about that because my answer is no. I don't care how many games Matthews and Nylander play. I don't care about who's on the back end. They're not good enough. As currently constructed, they're not good enough. And Leaf fans and Leaf Nation can give it to me as much as they want. You're not good enough. Look at the Atlantic Division. The Montreal Canadiens just played in the Eastern Conference Finals. Those kids are going to get better. The Buffalo Sabres are going to get better. The Ottawa Senators are going to be better. The Boston Bruins are going to be better. The Florida Panthers are going to be healthy. The only team you might be better than in your own division is Detroit, especially when we get into the Larkin stuff in a second. John Scheike had an opportunity here. He had a way to get out. He had a way to get out of Austin or Willie or whatever and put his own stamp on this team. And he took the easy way out. And I don't blame John Scheike for that. I blame Keith Pelly. Because Keith Pelly wouldn't handle a rebuild. They couldn't deal with, I'm going to keep calling it the Air Canada Center. I know it's not that. Or it's Scotiabank or whatever it is. They wouldn't deal with that half full. You need to pack that place everywhere. But let me ask you this question, Leafs. Austin Matthews, John Tavares, William Nylander. Grand total. They've won 2 playoff series together. What's the problem with saying, you know what? This roster wasn't good enough. Why are you so afraid to protect this team that hasn't won a damn thing? Because now, guess what? The gloves are off from here for me. The punching bags you love to punch are gone. Brendan Shanahan is gone. Kyle Dubas, by the way, he's in Pittsburgh. He's got a bunch of picks, and they made the playoffs this year. He's gone. All the coaches, Keefe, gone. Berube, gone. Mitch Marner just had one of the best playoff runs we've seen, despite losing in the Cup Final. He's gone. You can't hammer him anymore. But it's all right. We kept Austin and Willie, and we think we can compete. But the truth of the matter is, now would be the perfect opportunity to wave a white flag and start rebranding and rebuilding or retooling, however you want to phrase it. Let the rest of this division beat the crap out of each other. But nah, you got to be the spoiled child. So that is what it is. And then the last one, Peter Laviolette was hired to be the coach of the Kings. Uh, listen, if anyone needs to have a little reset here, it's the LA Kings. But I think as long as they got guys like Doughty and Panarin under contract, it doesn't matter. They're going to try to go for it, and that's their prerogative, you know. So they have to replace Andrei Kopitar, figure that out, get a little bit better on the back end. But Peter Laviolette's going to give them a little bit more offense. They got to find a little bit more dynamic players, but they'll get that when Kevin Fiala comes back. So we'll see what happens. I don't hate that fit for Peter Laviolette. Uh, Interested to see what happens with John Tortorella. Yeah, see if something interesting happens during next season because I don't think anyone's getting it fired at the moment. All right, I got two other things before we close this out. The Dylan Larkin trade request. Dylan Larkin requested a trade for the Red Wings. He's still got term left on his contract. He gave the Red Wings the three teams he'd love to go to. Yeah, full no move. And the three teams he put at the top of his list were, not surprising, Minnesota, Vegas, Florida. The Red Wings have come back and asked him for more teams. Um, and we're waiting to see what happens there. But the Red Wings don't have to be in a rush on this. They don't. He's got term, but they don't want this leaking into the season. But I would say this: I think if you're Steve Yzerman, the Yzer plan has failed there. They haven't made the playoffs in a decade. They have a lot of needs, in my opinion. They got free agents. My other question would be this: like, if you trade Larkin, can you hit reset here and maybe trade a DeBrincat too, and then see what you can get there? You got a pretty solid back end. You know, John Gibson and goals still. And the forwards led by Lucas Raymond, defense led by Mort Seider. But this is just, it's a tough spot. Larkin doesn't want to be hated by the people of Detroit. Steve Yzerman will never be hated by the people of Detroit. And it's kind of like whoever blinks first. And Larkin was like, I want to win. I want a gold medal this year. I want to get back to the playoffs. I haven't been since my rookie year. And look, they were in first place. I think to start the year, I think in January they were in first place. And then they took a nosedive in the second half of the season. Um, the Red Wings have some issues. They're going to have to figure some stuff out. So we'll see what happens with Steve Yzerman and Dylan Larkin. That's a big story heading into July 1 and the draft, which is next week. So we'll see what happens there on those fronts. All right, I want to end this on a little rant I have because social media. We all love social media. It's the day of social media. So the NHL, obviously, they announced their regular season awards, and people online love to argue on the awards, and I don't blame them. I have no problems arguing with the awards too. I often do argue the awards. I'm arguing against the awards all the time. So John Cooper won the Jack Adams, which was the coach of the year. He won it over Lindy Ruff and Dan Muse. In my opinion, Marty St. Louis should win this conversation. He wasn't. So then people online were like, it should have been Lindy Ruff. Then a couple of days later, the Vezina Trophy gets announced, and it's Andrei Vasilevsky of the Lightning. And that sets people off. Oh, how could Cooper win Coach of the Year when he's got the best goalie in the world? Blah, blah, blah. And then the last award to be announced was the Hart Trophy, which is the most valuable player. And Nikita Kucherov won that over Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid. And I'm going to just throw Macklin Celebrini in there because Celebrini should have been in there. And now people are like, oh, John Cooper definitely wasn't Coach of the Year because he had the best player in the world and he had the best goalie in the world. And he's John Cooper and he's won cups. And we know how great he is. John Cooper is criminally underappreciated by the hockey world. I could care less that Vasilevsky and Kucherov won their awards. If you didn't want to give Vasilevsky the Vezina, I'm not going to argue against it. Ilya Sorokin had a phenomenal year up until the end when the Isles as a whole collapsed. Kucherov, I think if the Sharks made the playoffs, it's Celebrini as the MVP. Kucherov had what, 60 points more than the second place player in Tampa? He had a lot more points. We love to harp on great coaches. We're like, oh, does he deserve to be coach of the year? Does he not deserve to be coach of the year? And I think the people who want to argue against John Cooper suffer from this little ice. I call it Steve Kerr ice. Steve Kerr, the old coach of the Warriors. And I think we don't talk about how great of a coach he is. Oh, he had Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and Kevin Durant. He's not that good of a coach. Well, when those guys don't play, he finds ways to stay in the game, doesn't he? John Cooper had Victor Hedman, who I still think is the best game-changing defensive defenseman in the league right now. Victor Hedman is still that good. Victor Hedman wasn't around. You know who turned in great years for the Tampa Bay Lightning? Darren Radish, who's going to get paid on July 1st. He's going to make a lot of money. You know who he can owe that? A lot of that to? John Cooper. He turned J.J. Moser, who, by the way, they got from Mikhail Sergachev in that trade. He got J.J. Moser a contract extension. JJ, Nate calls JJ all the time, seeing if he could get a little low. John Cooper turned Brandon Hagel into a 30-goal scorer. And in a year where, hey, maybe Tampa doesn't compete, hey, they finished second in the division. Yes, they lost in the first round of the playoffs. Guess what? These awards are for the regular season, not the playoffs. Nobody should have a problem with John Cooper winning Coach of the Year. And if you're so hurt by it, because Lindy Ruff, who's top 5 all time in wins already, didn't win the Jack Adams for 2026, I had news for you. You shouldn't care about it. The Sabres broke the drought, and everybody's happy and excited. But you got to find a thing to nitpick about. And this is what you want to nitpick? Oh, it should have been Lindy Ruff. Guess what? For years, we've said the Sabres have had the talent. They just had to put it together. Kudos to Lindy for sticking through. But guess what? And I know from like American Thanksgiving throughout the year, the Sabres were like the best team in hockey. I get it. You want your guy to win. But don't insult my intelligence by saying John Cooper didn't deserve it. John Cooper is the best freaking coach in hockey. Whether he wins a cup, doesn't win a cup, he found a way for a Lightning team that had a bunch of injuries. Ryan McDonough missed time. Hedman missed time. Eric Chernak on the back end. Braden Point missed games. And he found a way. Yes, I know Nikita Kucherov was great. Vasilevsky's great. But the Tampa Bay Lightning and John Cooper deserve respect. Lindy Ruff is a great coach. No one will ever deny he's not. But for 2025-26, John Cooper's your coach of the year. You don't make You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. You have to deal with it. In my opinion, I wouldn't have, if John Cooper wasn't even nominated, I wouldn't have voted for Lindy. My vote still would have been Marty St. Louis and what he did with Montreal. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone voices that opinion on social media. It's the greatness of social media. But at the end of the day, no one cares. Voters voted for who they voted for. Hell, there's a guy in San Diego who didn't vote for Derek Jeter to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Go attack that guy again. John Cooper didn't deserve Coach of the Year. All right. That'll do it. This edition of Breakaway Bandits podcast, sponsored by the Dugout Mode here on the Sports Insanity Network. When this gets uploaded to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube page. Go to the website, thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for your blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Socials. Follow the socials. Facebook, the net, Sports Insanity Network. Twitter, S Insanity Real. You can follow me personally. Twitterverse. Punmaster Rifkin, same name on Blue Sky. We'll try to do a free agency preview maybe at some point next week. We'll see what we get. If not, I'll try to do something maybe the night of July 1st to kind of recap the big signings. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Breakaway Bandits podcast, sponsored by the Dugout Mode here on the Sports Center Network. I am Mike Rifkin. Have a good one, everybody.